The last time there was a special congressional election in the North Country, it was a circus. It was 2009, and one of the nation's first Tea Party candidates, Doug Hoffman, emerged here. And conservative media nationally branded the moderate Republican Didi Skozafava a rhino, Republican in name only. And a political catchphrase was born. She got Skozafava'd. Seriously, there's an entry in urbandictionary.com. Go look it up. The point is, crazy things happen with special elections because there's no other elections going on. The whole nation is watching. We're likely to have another special election to replace Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, and it's already getting drawn into national politics. That's today's story of the day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from Long Run Wealth, an SEC-registered investment advisor in Lake Placid, providing comprehensive wealth management, retirement, and financial planning solutions. LongRunWealth.com.
Hey, I'm David Sommerstein. It's Wednesday, February 12th. First up, 22 states are suing New York over a law that requires fossil fuel companies to pay for part of the damage caused by climate change. Rebecca Rettelmeyer reports for the New York Public News Network.
Governor Kathy Hochul signed the Climate Change Superfund Act into law late last year. It's meant to raise over $3 billion annually from oil and gas companies to fund projects that help the state withstand the effects of climate change, like extreme weather and floods. The recent lawsuit, led by the state of West Virginia, alleges the law is an overreach. West Virginia's Attorney General J.B. McCuskey said at a press conference recently that pollution must be regulated by the federal government, not states.
We're not going to allow states like New York to usurp the federal government, who has the sole authority to regulate the emissions that are being targeted in the Superfund bill.
New York Attorney General Letitia James did not respond to a request for comment. Paul DeMichelle is Deputy Communications Director for Governor Hochul. In a statement, he said Hochul proudly signed the Climate Change Superfund Act to ensure fossil fuel companies pay for some environmental damages. He said the governor's team looks forward to defending the legislation in court. In Ithaca, I'm Rebecca Rettelmeyer for the New York Public News Network.
One of the North Country's congresswomen introduced a bill Tuesday that would prohibit federal funding for NPR and PBS. Republican Claudia Tenney, whose district covers most of Jefferson County, claimed the two organizations have a partisan bias. She said they're using public dollars, quote, to promote a political agenda rather than report the facts. Tenney's bill, the Defund Government-Sponsored Propaganda Act, would end direct and indirect federal support of NPR and PBS. NPR receives about 1% of its funding directly from the federal government, compared to 16% for PBS. Both are also supported by member stations, including North Country Public Radio, that receive federal funding from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a publicly funded nonprofit corporation. Travelers will once again be able to fly from Plattsburgh to Washington, D.C. this spring. Contour Airlines will change its destination from Philadelphia to Dulles International Airport on May 1st. The Plattsburgh Airport used to offer flights to Dulles through SkyWest. The airline pulled out of multiple markets in 2022 due to staffing challenges. Contour will offer a dozen round-trip flights each week on 30-seat aircraft. Passengers will be able to connect to more than 100 destinations through the airline's partnership with United. The special election to replace Elise Stefanik in Congress has become a political football in Albany and Washington. Late Monday, Albany Democrats put on hold a bill that would delay the special election until June or even November, which possibly would leave the North Country without a representative in Congress for months. That plan drew bipartisan outcries in our region. Meanwhile, Stefanik, whose nomination to be UN ambassador was expected to sail through the Senate, still hasn't been confirmed to the post. To look at all the political brinkmanship behind this, I spoke with the New York Public News Network's Jimmy Vielkind. He says it's all a matter of the math in Congress.
Right now, Republicans control the House of Representatives by a 218 to 215 margin. That means that if Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson wants to bring forward legislation, he's got to have almost everyone in his conference, except he can only lose one or two votes. If Stefanik were to resign to take this position at the United Nations, that margin only gets smaller. So what I've heard from Republican officials at the state and within the 21st district is that this math is hanging up Stefanik's confirmation. Now, things will get a little easier in April. There are two special elections taking place in Florida where Republicans are favored to win. That should bump up the House Majority's conference and their tally in their control of the House of Representatives, and it might pave the way for Stefanik to move forward.
And so Democrats are trying to take advantage of this math in their own way by potentially holding up this special election by extending the calendar, essentially, extending the deadline when they have to hold a special election.
That's exactly right. So it's the same idea. It's the same math. It's obviously harder for Republicans who control the House to pass major legislation with a tighter margins. The 21st District leans Republican. Republicans are favored to win. Of course, Stefanik won an easy re-election over Paula Collins in the general election last year. And the thinking is that a Republican is favored to win the special election. So by delaying that date, you're delaying having another Republican vote in Washington.
Now, there's this really fascinating political twist here that has nothing to do with this North Country congressional seat. And that is the Democrats could hold back this seat as a way to sort of have some leverage that Governor Kathy Hochul wants to have with President Donald Trump in something in New York City, congestion pricing.
That's right. There's lots of moving pieces here. So let's break them down one by one. There was this Democratic proposal that would have effectively delayed a special election in the 21st district. And that's something that would have frustrated Republicans in Washington. And it's something that Republicans in New York state government were howling quite loudly about. At the same time, Governor Hochul is lobbying President Trump and the Trump administration to keep in place the system of congestion pricing, which charges drivers $9 to enter the most congested and busiest parts of Manhattan. So Hochul has had a series of talks with President Trump about this program. She is trying to convince him that it is good for the city, that he shouldn't kill it. Trump, over the weekend, gave an interview to the New York Post in which he said that he believed he had the power to kill it, but he was trying to negotiate something with Governor Hochul. But while that's going on, Governor Hochul's team believes that it doesn't want to antagonize the president and national Republicans unnecessarily. We heard from an official familiar with the matter that that was the driving force for pumping the brakes on this proposal to change special elections and to keep this Stefanik seat vacant.
So as you mentioned, there was howling and serious opposition from both Republicans and Democrats in the 21st Congressional District about delaying the special election, passing this bill, as you were saying. And it seems like the, Democrats in Albany are pumping the brakes on it. So is it dead? Or does this kind of continue up there as like a political football?
Well, things don't die easily in Albany. It's a land where the capital is filled with zombies, some of whom are elected and some of whom aren't. I asked Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins exactly that question earlier today, David. I said, is this bill dead? And she repeatedly said, it's on hold. It's on hold. So right now, there are no plans to bring it to a vote in the state Senate and likewise in the state Assembly, but it's still hanging out there. And with the support of the Democratic leaders of both houses, it's something that I believe could be taken up and passed very quickly if leaders decide to move forward.
Jimmy Vielkind is one of NCPR's and the New York Public News Network's new Albany correspondents. He's a veteran journalist in Albany. It's great to have him reporting for us. We have more news all the time at ncpr.org. Music today by Christopher Watts and Danny Thomas, both of Canton. I'm David Sommerstein, North Country Public Radio.